Thanks. We need to talk about internet internalized misogyny. Social media has become sectioned off more and more. Call it an echo chamber, call it a cult with an influencer at the head proselytizing to their followers, who evangelize their message. There are more and more social media takedowns, dog piles, and punching down than ever before, and opinions are becoming more and more partitioned with little left for nuance or forgiveness. Remember the saying, facts don't care about your feelings? Nowadays, it seems like opinions are being treated as facts, as small clips are being shared online, clipped to discern whatever, and opinions are being chosen as an objective truth.
That's my opinion!
And social media has picked apart men online for the role they've played. The incels, the manosphere, even the lonely gamers being a part of every negative and hateful corner on the internet.
What is going on with young men right now? And why does it feel scary?
Not as many people are looking to women as much when it comes to taking a part in online internet misogyny, takedown campaigns, and in general, online hate. And honestly, it's not because women don't deserve to be called out for the hate they cause online, the misogyny they take part of.
Well, I guess I have what you call a round face, and I wear my hair the way you said I shouldn't. But I don't see how things like that will make a girl more popular if she's not pretty to begin with.
I wish that I could wave a magic wand. Presto, like that. You will be prettier. You will be more popular.
If we want to have a more equal society, it is equally as offensive to sit here and pretend that only male spaces take part in online hate and remain completely silent when it comes to the online bullying and harassment in women's spaces. Yet, for the most part, conversations surrounding online hate and internet misogyny have stopped completely at the focus of men. And I would argue this has caused the problem of internalized misogyny within women's online spaces to get worse and worse, largely because internalized misogyny is still greatly misunderstood. And so it's become a weapon of self-destruction in the modern digital age.
I said, what's so special about me? Most women aren't special.
Well, that's down to your personal opinion.
No, I'm like, seriously, what do women bring in 2022 that is special?
Nothing.
Do most women have a cookbook? Do most women really know how to cater to a man? No. Are most women virgins on their wedding day? No. So what do most women bring in 2022 that is special?
Look at this feminism right here. Holy They talk about toxic masculinity.
My choice to listen to what matters and not your voice. Get out.
We want to hear her, not you.
So let's talk about how, through various methods of internalized misogyny, women are eating themselves alive online, and how this has persisted for a very long time but has exacerbated recently, and what we can do to help the issue. Internalized misogyny refers to women's use of sexism directed towards other women or themselves, even in the absence of men. It's a form of oppression that twists the minds of the women being targeted by it, making them feel the same way about themselves as their oppressors do. Researcher Chesler argues that to understand how internalized misogyny functions, it's important to admit that women are not less sexist than men, and to not idealize them, but rather accept them as human beings who are capable of both compassion and cruelty, cooperation and competition, selfishness and altruism. This acknowledgement is essential in addressing the complexities of internalized misogyny and dismantling its pervasive influence. Online, this is manifested as women policing other women for their online behaviors, either to keep them in line, bash them entirely, or to dogpile if their behavior is deemed unacceptable.
I will not be shamed out of discussing this by people who say it's slut shaming or it's not relevant. It is relevant when a young candidate tries to sleep her way into politics and into power. And that is what it appears Kamala Harris did when she was a young political aspirant in San Francisco. That relationship paid dividends for her in more ways than one.
While there are always valid reasons to critique anyone of any gender online, I mean, obviously, where is the line exactly? I think we should start asking ourselves this question, as well as who is judging what is acceptable or unacceptable behavior? Who is making those rules? And are we policing people's behaviors online according to patriarchal standards?
Dear women, shut the fuck up and get back in the kitchen.
Maybe we could even talk about how social media itself is structured to prop up this behavior. How even before the founding of Facebook was its precursor called Face Mash, created by Mark Zuckerberg in 2003 to rate the attractiveness of female Harvard students. But certainly that hasn't trickled over into the culture of social media. And of course, women are nowhere near the ones to blame for all of this. But what happens when we exist in the online culture that perpetuates this every day? What happens when we enable it? Everyone ultimately will have their own standards for what is legitimate criticism and what crosses the line into unacceptable or too harsh. For me personally, criticism surrounding racism and criticism surrounding the exploitation of others are always valid reasons to criticize. Hateful, vindictive behavior is also always a valid reason to criticize someone. But to judge someone's intent is where things get dicey, because your own biases can easily get in the way, especially if you're dealing with internalized misogyny or any other sort of bias. You can easily characterize someone in a negative way when the reality may be very different. Personally speaking, I don't think it's ever okay to nitpick someone's behavior, to criticize someone for the way they speak, for things they can't change about themselves or their appearance. That's overall not okay.
I think that you should dress more feminine, you know, because like...
Excuse me?
I'm saying that you should dress more feminine. Because like right now, because like, as a guy, it's not pleasing for the eye. You know?
I talk to girls, even if they're like extremely beautiful, they just piss me off.
I'm also of the personal belief that gossip and drama shouldn't be villainized or demonized, and that it's sexist to do so. I and many women and people online have made many valid videos online criticizing people for many valid things. And I don't want this video to be an opportunity to accuse any woman making a critical video of being misogynistic. This video simply has the intention to discuss a larger pattern I've been seeing that goes beyond gossip and drama into blatant vindictive behaviors that have escalated so far that they should be noticed and addressed. There's an online study with a quote that reads, "The women propagating hate against other women are especially interesting. Why do they contribute to the harsh judgment of their peers? Why do they conform and how?" These cases of female misogyny in women show that part of the oppression of women put in place by patriarchy actually resides in mechanisms of internalized oppression. The pick-me-girl phenomenon is a good example of that, yet the girl who makes fun of her also is. Hating on women has become a valuable type of content that is guaranteed to provoke reactions, likes, and shares. First, let's talk about the pick-me.
Signs of a pick-me girl.
I really sounded like a pick-me just then.
3 pick-me's that you'll run into at some point in your life.
I think maybe I am a pick-me girl.
Let's talk about 8 signs that you're a pick-me.
According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, pick-me is a slang term for a person, usually a young woman, seen as behaving in a contemptible way for attention and approval, usually from male peers. It is most often used in the expression pick-me girl, which disparages a young woman who's seen as faking interest in stereotypically male activities or conforming to traditional values at the expense of other young women. It is also used in pick-me boy, referring to a young man who feigns emotional vulnerability to win the attention of women. More generally, pick-me can refer to anyone thought to be trying too hard to earn acceptance.
Why are you walking like that?
Like what?
Like with your butt sticking out.
If you don't have a big butt, just say that. I swear, like, bitches are so jealous.
Let's be so for real. These men don't stand a chance in dating because women turn everything into a red flag. He breathed the wrong way, red flag. He's existing, red flag.
I don't know about you, but to me, the idea of pick-me being the worst type of woman out there, the more I think about it, has started to feel icky. Because oftentimes, someone who is called a pick-me is really someone who's kind of isolated, who has wrong ideas about how to get attention and misrepresents their interests.
My natural instinct is like to impress a man or to like to... Like I want to say things like I want to say things that I know that like they're gonna relate to and stuff like that because that's like kind of like I wonder about that.
Such a massive pick me until like 18 or like I just got humbled crazy like by the internet and I think that saved me from that. But
that's what's happening to me. Yeah.
I was such a fucking pick me. Like, because I always wanted my dad to love me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that translated into all of the first people I ever dated.
The pick-me will learn eventually that doing the "I'm not like other girls" trope to put other women down just leaves you in a room with other people who are also totally okay with putting other women down. But the thing is, the pick-me isn't necessarily cruel or abusive. towards other women. They can be in the process of getting picked, but that isn't a defining quality of a pick-me. There has been the mean girl trope. In the media, the mean girl trope has been portrayed as the conventionally pretty bully in school.
What's the first early memories you have of being bullied?
In elementary school,
Yeah.
you know, we went to a private parochial school. It was a Catholic school, and there were rich people that went there. And I was not rich by any stretch of the imagination. So it was a uniform school, thank goodness. So we didn't have to compete with clothing, but we did compete with things like shoes, jewelry, you know, your backpack and how expensive it looked and stuff. And all my stuff came from Kmart. We shopped at Kmart.
Girl, you just hit me in the soul with that Kmart. The blue light special.
The blue light special.
Cyberbullying isn't spoken about as much. Remember back in the day when there was huge campaigns, especially in schools, to stop cyberbullying. Yet it feels that lately those have ceased to exist. Yet mass hate campaigns and online pile-ons are still occurring. And the unspoken aspect of it is that the mean girls still exist, are still involved in online bullying, and they've normalized their own behavior to such an extent that they can't see its toxicity and internalized misogyny. They're still looking to the Regina George stereotype from the media instead of maybe looking in the mirror. On the other hand, for a period of time, there was the girl's girl, a statement meant to represent a girl who was essentially the opposite of a I keep booping the mic. A statement meant to represent a girl who was essentially the opposite of a pick-me and all about supporting other women.
I find that the majority of women who use the term girl's girl, first of all, are infantilizing themselves. I am a grown-ass woman. The term girl's girl, now I am seeing being simply used as a weapon to say, I don't like what you're doing, and therefore you are an enemy of us.
The girl's girl was quickly used as a weapon. If you aren't doing something deemed girl's girl enough, then, well, you're bad. You need to be girl's girl.
I think I forget that not every girl is a girl's girl, because I'm definitely a girl's girl. All my friends are girls. And so it's weird to me when I meet a girl that's not. I saw this girl today and she was wearing this killer outfit. She had her pants tucked into the coolest rhinestone cowboy boots. I went up to her and I was like, girl, your fit is fitting. You look amazing. I've been looking for boots just like that. Where did you get them? She's like, yeah, see, the thing about these boots, can't really say. And I was like, you can't really say what?
But it seems that everyone had different definitions of what defines a girl's girl. Again, policing other women on their behavior so they fall in line. Eventually, the term girl's girl dropped off from being used so frequently, just like the term girl boss, which was once used positively. But every time there's a positive term for women, it always seems like it ends up getting weaponized as a way to police women, keep you in check. And the thing is, it's by other women. Are you girl boss enough? Are you a girl's girl? I fear our priorities might be a little bit skewed. What are you wearing? And is it acceptable in today's society? Is it a clean girl aesthetic or is it pick me? What is your identity and how does it assimilate into girl culture and our patriarchal system? If you're too bold, brash, or stepping out of line, there are systems in place to put you back in line. It might hurt to hear it, but deep in your core, you know intuitively that we've developed systems to police one another, mostly because the women in our lives, our mothers and grandmothers, have done the same thing to us our entire lives. As we were growing up, forming our own identity, if we were too much, we were often told so, swiftly and, well, aggressively, to keep us in line. Another manifestation of internalized misogyny can be observed in the paradoxical tendency for women to exhibit greater distrust towards other women than men. This phenomenon can be attributed to the historical dismissal of women's grievances and concerns as being delusional, confusing, and dishonest. Studies have also shown that there's a greater tendency for aggression towards women who violate societal norms, such as feminists, career women, or sexually explicit women, because they're perceived as more threatening to patriarchal society and its established roles and norms. I remember growing up, I loved anime, particularly Sailor Moon. I wanted to dress very strangely for the time, even wearing multiple outfits in a day, and I drew different anime characters all over my homework and school papers when I was bored. And I remember often getting judged and even getting in trouble for this. I felt really embarrassed about it, kind of shamed about it. In elementary school, I also remember a girl who was really shy guy who ended up farting in the middle of class, and the whole class laughed at her and teased her about it. And without thinking about it, I blurted out, "It's natural," because I could see how mortified she was at the time. Obviously, instead of people going, "You know, you kind of have a point there," the whole class turned their attention to me and laughed at my statement. And for the next few weeks, a few people would look at me and mock my statement and say, "It's natural," in a joking tone. And objectively, farts are funny, a humor fit for all ages. While a lot of bully behavior has names, it hasn't necessarily been applied to this sort of online internalized misogyny behavior. Outside of incel culture and the manosphere, people also use the label cancel culture nowadays, but I would argue what I'm talking about specifically is both within and outside of that particular label. There's also the pick me, which again is kind of both within and outside of this label. What if there's a more sinister form of internalized misogyny than the pick me that no one is talking about? One that isn't about setting yourself apart from other women so that you're picked or chosen, or even being seen as the best girl's girl or girl boss, because it's not about being picked at all or rising to the top, but instead bringing everyone else down to your level, attacking, lashing out. Hostile sexism encompasses various manifestations, including the utilization of aggressive language, sexist slurs, passive-aggressive conduct, victim blaming, and denial. This type of behavior finds a receptive environment within women who have internalized misogynistic beliefs and values that are deeply ingrained due to societal and cultural influences.
When we go on our own, it's chaos. We become whores. Right, 90% of us have been on birth control. The average body count is between 5 and 8, and all the men say we're lying, so we probably are.
There's many instances where women have brought up allegations of abuse and harassment and were blamed for it. The focus shifted onto them and their actions. The narrative that they had equal blame in what took place. The concept of mutual abuse has largely been debunked by advocates. And what most people think is mutual abuse is usually reactive abuse, where one person is provoking another over and over and over again, trying to get a reaction out of them so they're able to darvo them or point the finger at them and say they're taking equal part in the abuse. There's some modern instances I could bring up, and even then I'm nervous what the general reaction would be. How many people would debate me in the comments over whether or not the woman in question deserved the level of public backlash she received or has equal blame because she's unlikable? I think when talking about victim blaming and how public smear campaigns take place, it's important to discuss the Me Too movement. What kickstarted the Me Too movement was, infamously, the New York Times launching a story about Harvey Weinstein's long history of sexual assault and harassment.
During awards season, Harvey Weinstein's power is on full display.
I just want to thank my agent, Kevin Uvain, and God, Harvey Weinstein.
His films, including The King's Speech, Pulp Fiction, and Shakespeare in Love, winning 75 Oscars. Now a New York Times investigation alleges Weinstein used his power for more sordid ends, uncovering sexual harassment allegations spanning almost 3 decades. From actresses Ashley Judd and Rose McGowan to young female assistants looking to start careers in Hollywood.
The way that women were abused in workplaces and the entertainment industry had been spoken about covertly for a long time before the Me Too movement, but there were often narratives centered around shaming and victim blaming involved in the conversation. What was she wearing? She must have slept her way to the top. If a woman received praise and accolades, she must have done something sexual or debased herself in some way to get it. If a woman was brought down or victimized, the immediate question was, what did she do to deserve it? Yet the shock surrounding the Harvey Weinstein story opened a dialogue for many women to come forward with their stories. The now infamous Media Men list, begun by journalist Maura Donegan, turned the Whisper Network into a spreadsheet where women could add layers to each report. The common denominator has been, as sociology professor Christy Thornton noted, in our culture, part of what it means to be a powerful man is to have unfettered access to women's bodies, or the bodies of others who are less powerful. Transgender and queer people, and people of color, are especially vulnerable to such violence. Looking back now, it's hard to remember a time when majority of women experienced sexual violence in their life, yet it wasn't an openly discussed thing because women weren't believed. But Me Too existed for years before the Harvey Weinstein story came to light, if you could believe it. Tarana Burke has worked for decades with young women of color who survived sexual violence. And in 2006, she named her campaign Me Too as an expression of solidarity. There were people who had been doing the work for years, yet it took something major, something public and mainstream for women's stories to finally be believed.
When you go through something as traumatic as sexual violence, there's a way that you close up.
Who were we supposed to tell? Were we supposed to call some fantasy attorney general of moviedom?
And we're conditioned since birth, before our feet hit the ground, to be polite.
Yet still, some critics of the Me Too movement were women themselves, speaking out against the danger of women coming forward. In fact, 100 prominent French women signed a letter calling the Me Too movement a witch hunt against men. You know, a witch hunt being a historically prominent thing that targeted women. Though in the German lands, when the Great Witch Panics happened, men, women, and children were caught up in the panic, to be fair. Most reprehensible was when French radio host and former porn star Brigitte Lahaye said that some women enjoy being raped. Recently, we've been hearing a lot about purity testing on the left, but years ago, during the Me Too movement, before Diddy, before Jeffrey Epstein, this was also something people were complaining about regarding Me Too, being essentially a way to purity test. French actress Catherine Deneuve, sorry if I pronounced your last name wrong, signed a letter warning against Puritanism associated with the Me Too movement. There was even a New York Times article written about her statements against the movement. Women speaking out about the sexual violence and sexual assault they were experiencing was Puritanism. Catherine ended up apologizing for these statements after receiving backlash, saying, "I fraternally salute all the women victims of odious acts who may have felt aggrieved by the letter in Le Monde. It is to them and them alone that I offer my apology." Meanwhile, another, also French, famous actress, Brigitte Bardot, spoke against the movement, saying to the French magazine Paris Match, "The vast majority are being hypocritical and ridiculous." In the past, Brigitte Bardot has been fined for provoking discrimination and racial hatred against the Muslim community in France. Yeah, I think it's most disappointing when other women who are in power punch down instead of standing alongside victims. This is also why girl boss feminism is, well, a lie. A cute word to put on a mug that effectively does nothing. We've seen time and time again that when a woman, particularly a white woman, rises to power to try and survive in the systems in place, she will perpetuate harm instead of actively oppose it for her own self-betterment at the cost of others, continuing cycles of harm. This is why I loved the quote in my Secret Lies of Mormon Wives video that said something along the lines of, "Modern white feminism has become white women aspiring to be like their rich white fathers." For example, the Time's Up page associated with the Me Too movement links to leanin.org as a trusted partner organization. Leanin.org describes itself as an organization to help women achieve their ambitions and work to create an equal world. Sounds great, right? The organization was inspired by Facebook executive Sheryl Sandberg, who wrote the book Lean In: Women, Work, and the Will to Lead. The system doesn't need to change. Women, it's your fault. You aren't leaning in hard enough, working hard enough. You don't have enough will to lead. Of course, it's great that the organization is focused on equality in the workplace, and I don't want to discount their work overall, but the main tone feels like, once again, directing the onus and tone policing women and the approaches women are taking, rather than the overall system and structures in place. Stupid, dumb women isn't acting girl boss enough, being strong enough. Those notions of what defines strength, girl bossness, are rooted in white supremacy culture. It's okay to be soft-spoken and still be a leader. You should be able to be gentle and still be listened to. This all perpetuates the notion that if you don't want to be essentially victimized, you have to lean in to working hard, and that from the top down, things will trickle to you. And if we lift up enough women into high positions, and if you just work hard enough, then women will no longer be victimized and everything will be equal. Yeah, how's that working out for us? Is Grimes or Hillary Clinton really saving the world here? Yet through this dialogue, we've found new ways to place all of the blame onto ourselves. Gender pay gap? Lean in more. Do more school, work harder, while also being the main caretaker at home and put all of that on your shoulders. You can do it all. And if you can't, that's the fault of your own, not the systems in place. Suddenly, women are becoming more educated than men. And while there's a large number of women entering the corporate pipeline, data shows, in partnership with leanin.org, that women are still struggling to climb the corporate ladder. Maybe they just need to lean in more? Instead of collectively working together to dismantle these systems, many women have been unable to tackle their own internalized misogyny and continually blame each other for the problems faced in the day-to-day. There's so many examples throughout history of a woman who's been targeted with such intense veracity, and usually the outlier is she did not conform to the patriarchal norms and was hated with such intensity, sometimes her life even destroyed over it. I mean, one of the clearest examples of this taking place are the witch trials, where women who were perceived as strange and unusual were literally killed for it. One of the most shocking aspects to me when learning about the witch trials were how many women were involved in accusing other women of being witches. But many of the women or girls who accused other women of witchcraft were ultimately victims themselves. For example, in the Salem witch trials in colonial Massachusetts from 1962 to 1963, a group of girls claimed to be possessed by the devil accused local women of witchcraft. The girls at the time were only 9 and 11 years old and started a chain reaction of hysteria as they were essentially coerced or forced to accuse other women in their town of witchcraft. Is this the effect of convincing people in an oppressed system that they can be saved simply by making another situation worse? Another prominent example, but in literature, is Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter. The Scarlet Letter is a literary classic which examines the different shaming tactics that are used to humiliate and silence women in a Puritan culture. In the novel, the main character Hester has a child out of wedlock. She was publicly shamed by being forced to stand on a scaffold in the middle of a town square while her neighbors were encouraged to mock her. What does this kind of sound like? Kind of sounds like the modern day internet, doesn't it? Kind of sounds like just being online. She was driven to the edge of her community and forced to live in isolation. We see this as horrific, like to think we're a much more evolved society, but I still question how much more evolved we really are. Here's the point of the video where I want to bring up more modern examples of online or media takedown, where people have targeted and harassed women for simply stepping outside of their prescribed roles or the status quo. But part of me is a little bit afraid to. I feel like when I bring up each example, there will be comments that'll try to argue over the bad things that each woman has done to show exactly why they deserved the harsh treatment they received. First, let's talk about Britney Spears. A famous, incredibly talented pop star begins to grapple with her mental health in the public eye for reasons most of us will probably never know, but one of the reasons likely being the constant stalking that the paparazzi and public were subjecting her to.
What do you think it'll take to get the paparazzi to leave you alone?
I don't know. I don't know.
Is that one of your biggest wishes?
Yeah. It's okay. I would like for them to leave me alone.
If you could talk to them as individuals, not as a group, what would you say to them?
I would just say that you have babies at home and you have a wife, and if you don't, you have to realize that we're people and that we just need privacy and we need our respect, and those are things that you have to have as a human.
And instead of empathy or giving her privacy, she was judged and ridiculed in an unforgiving and harsh manner at the time, shifting into extreme cruelty. In 2008, Perez Hilton even sold t-shirts asking why Britney Spears couldn't have died instead of Heath Ledger. Hilton apologized for some of his more horrible stunts in 2020 in his 2020 autobiography, writing, "I have a ton of regrets. I never needed to be so mean or cruel." There was a moment when Britney Spears cried in an interview as Diane Sawyer blamed her for her breakup with Justin Timberlake.
Okay, you can bop me. I have to ask a couple of things about Justin.
Okay, of course.
He has gone on television and pretty much said You broke his heart. You did something that caused him so much pain, so much suffering. What did you do? But you said, I've only slept with one person in my whole life, 2 years into my relationship with Justin. And yet he's left the impression that you weren't faithful, that you betrayed the relationship.
Hello. Ew. Strawberry. Yeah, it was a weird. Ew. I'm embarrassed. Can we?
Not to mention when Justin Timberlake physically exposed Janet Jackson at the 2004 Super Bowl.
It has been now almost 2 years since Janet's Super Bowl halftime performance made news around the world. The FCC received more than 500,000 complaints about that broadcast. CBS was fined $550,000, and then the NFL was asked to refund the $10 million that they had been given to the halftime show sponsor.
And somehow that led to the undoing of her career. Let's talk about Miley Cyrus, someone who grew up under the harsh lens of Disney and had to go through the transition of being a beloved child star and then growing up under the public eye. When she tried to rebel from the picture-perfect image that was placed onto her and came out with bangers and the MTV performance, the public was so upset that she was breaking out of the mold they had given her that she was shamed, mocked, and ridiculed by major institutions and the like.
My family and I are so excited to see you perform tonight. You know, I just hope it's G-rated, you know what I'm saying? Because even though my kids are the most hyper-mature teenagers in history, they are easily shocked by anything remotely sexual, you know what I mean?
Kids look up to you as a role model. I understand that, old me, but I'm only 20 years old. I need some freedom to grow up and make mistakes. And no matter what happens, I promise I'll always be true to Miley Cyrus. Well, that's all I can ask for.
That was how America ended. Canada did great, though.
Then there's Kim Kardashian. Now, obviously, I think there are many valid reasons to criticize Kim Kardashian, as I have made deep dives on the Kardashian family. That being said, when Kim first rose to prominence, she was heavily criticized for a leaked sex tape, mocked and slut-shamed. Whether or not her family was behind the leak itself, it doesn't excuse people shaming, mocking, and being so misogynistic towards her.
What would you rather have, Jessica Simpson's rack or Kim Kardashian's ass?
I would not want that. That's gross. It reminds me of cottage cheese inside of a big trash bag.
Ouch! Another aspect of cruelty leveled at Kim was largely centered around her looks and body type. Kim Kardashian is an incredibly beautiful woman, yet because she didn't look like the other famous women at the time, she was curvy and Armenian, the amount of disgusting comments levied her way was almost unbelievable.
A whale's vagina, which reminds me, Kim Kardashian's here. She's had a lot of black men celebrate in her end zone. Kim, word of advice, close your legs. You have more public beef than Kendrick and Drake.
I feel like the comments I could make regarding both Paris Hilton and Lindsay Lohan could be very similar, as both relate to the two of them being shamed for being party girls without examining the two's traumatic upbringings with any level of empathy. Paris has spoken openly about the abuse she's received growing up, particularly at child wilderness camps, speaking out against them.
I felt like I was just kind of sent away to be hidden. I first sent her to an outdoor wilderness program. It was just constant yelling at, like, boot camp style. Got back and they literally just beat the out of us in front of everyone, just to let everyone know, if you run away, this is what happens.
Lindsay Lohan had a very traumatic childhood that has been noted and verified.
And do you feel like you grew up in a broken home? But how do you think of how you grew up?
It was, we could have 5 cars and everything that we wanted and a beautiful home. And then within a 3-month span, I'm like, oh, just waiting for dad to but not come home for 3 nights again. So it was always very up and down. Nothing was ever, it was really rocky.
Yet Lindsay was mocked and shamed when she was publicly grappling with addiction in the aftermath.
Well, you look remarkably well. Now, you know I have routinely made jokes about you and the activities, true and otherwise. You're aware of that, right?
I like that you say true and otherwise.
Yeah.
Not true and false.
Now, aren't you supposed to be in rehab now?
Megan Fox has also spoken out about a lot of hate she's received. In one interview, Megan mentions how while a lot of younger girls loved her, most of the hate she gets is from older women.
I think women are harder on everything than men are. But I think grown women in particular can be, for some reason, really hateful towards me. But teenage girls seem to be, they accept me much more.
Genuinely, why? Bachelorette star Hannah Brown speaks on slut-shaming she received when openly discussing her sex life on the dating show.
It seems like you felt judged or shamed.
Yes, regardless of anything that I've done, that people might think, oh, well, that deserves a scarlet letter. That's not how it works. Like, I can do whatever I sin daily, and Jesus still loves me.
Misty Copeland speaks on body shaming in her autobiography, Life in Motion, An Unlikely Ballerina. She was told she couldn't be a ballerina because she was black and because those in the industry felt she didn't have the classic shape of a ballerina.
I mean, there's so much deeper kind of underlying meaning behind the things I was told. Because when people meet me, you know, they're like, wow, you're really small, you're very petite, and you're lean. And so, you know, I've had to think a lot about why those things are being said to me, or even look at the bodies next to me of the dancers who are not black and say, do we look that different? I mean, I was told I was too muscular, I was too short, my breasts are too big. And to me, that's all code for your skin is too dark. Your skin is too brown.
I could talk about this endlessly, from Billie Holiday to Amy Winehouse, and so many examples. Just recently at Thanksgiving, I was lectured by someone for using an example of Brad Pitt in one of my videos because of the abuse allegations by his family, because women make false allegations all the time that destroy famous men's lives. But just off the fairly simple research for this video, there's a deep well, a plethora of women whose careers have been destroyed not because of serious allegations, but due to them seemingly falling out of line and acting in a way media and culture has deemed unacceptable, or simply because of qualities they naturally had and were born with. I can't help but notice this stark contrast. I don't know what to do with it other than call it out. While the hate these women received came from all genders and was associated with misogyny, what cannot be ignored and should be included in this discussion is that women also did take part in the hate, the misogyny, the oppression. According to a study titled Internalized Misogyny, the Patriarchy Inside Our Heads, when women experience dissatisfaction with themselves due to negative stereotypes associated with femininity in society, this discontent may extend to other women. By adopting their behavior to align with male expectations, women may experience psychological relief in the present moment, but they ultimately perpetuate their own oppression and maintain the status quo. This is why numerous women resort to internalized misogyny as a psychological defense mechanism, which helps them navigate a world characterized by oppression. They internalize the belief in their own inferiority, and while some women question this disturbing feeling, others simply ignore or deny it. Internalized misogyny also creates confirmation bias, where you only see women online in a certain way, so anything deemed problematic only reinforces that in your brain, and anything good is automatically ignored in your mind. It's a losing game for the women who may genuinely have something, well, genuine to provide. It's like they're putting content out into the world with a held up to their head, and one wrong move will set off a ton of people and confirm what most people already subconsciously thought about them the entire time. Studies also show that the comments under a post do affect the way people perceive the user who posted it. This is why harassment campaigns work, but some researchers believe you are more susceptible to this if you have higher levels of internalized misogyny. I cannot say susceptible right now in that sentence.
There has been a considerable body of research exploring the idea that outsider input on social media, such as comments on a post, affects the way that people perceive the content and the user who posted it. However, far fewer research has explored individual differences that may play a role in the level of malleability in such perceptions of others on social media. One such individual difference may be internalized misogyny. Internalized misogyny is described as a woman's negative feelings towards femininity that helps men and masculinity maintain power. They might show this through minimizing the value of women, not trusting women, or having beliefs that favor men.
Essentially, if you see an Instagram post of a woman posing and a comment says, "stupid bitch," Normally, most people would think that's a really weird comment. However, if you have high levels of internalized misogyny, this comment may actually influence how you view the woman in the photo. The sad thing is, women with high levels of internalized misogyny may even be aware of this, and so afraid of this reality becoming their own reality that they lash out at other women in hopes that it will somehow protect them from this same fate. There isn't really a strict definition for this sort of online behavior or archetype. One would think that it would be seen as the counterpart to the incel, but the femcel, which is seen as the counterpart to the incel, is described much differently. Though the label femcel has been called the counterpart to the incel, I would argue that the way the femcel has been defined online currently doesn't fit this definition.
Incel and not just an incel.
Because it's just a different ideology, in my opinion. Old men want to go after the most beautiful woman, and they don't actually want to go for the women who are ugly, like myself.
Why do you think you are a femcel then? I mean, is it because you haven't had luck with guys or something? Like what?
Yeah, I've never had luck with guys. No guys have ever asked me out. And the only time that guys would ask me out would be to mock me.
The femcels that have been pointed out online have been seen as essentially radical feminists who shut themselves away from the world and retreat into online echo chambers and social isolation. Studies also show these femcels that have been studied actually create supportive and welcoming communities on a journey of radical acceptance in the face of adversity. The irony is that while internalized misogyny has been noted to cause women to pick apart other women due to their own self-hatred, femcels seek solace and support within their community, engaging in a discourse that, while acknowledging discrimination and loneliness, leads towards solidarity and mutual aid rather than hostility. Their approach is more aligned with critique of social norms and a quest for structural change. To me, that sounds very positive. The only similarities between a femcel and an incel is that both have an involuntary celibacy aspect, but the ways in which they behave seems very different. The incel has been characterized to lash out. Is there an equivalency between women online? Well, maybe not to the same extent, especially in violence, and I don't think it's healthy to make comparisons, but I think that if parallels were to be made, it would be with women online who have high levels of self-hatred and internalized misogyny, that they lash out and participate in online takedowns, pylons, and hate campaigns to soothe their own ego. For example, I would argue that Pearl was not only a pick-me, but a self-hating person with high levels of internalized misogyny. This is a behavior where instead of directing all the anger and frustration a woman has with society with herself in a self-constructive way, she decides to direct it at other women. Okay. This sort of archetype soothes their internalized self-hatred through the takedowns of other women. The internet has allowed misogyny to congregate in large numbers and to criticize other women based on meaningless nitpicks like her looks, her attitude, everything about her, and it's been normalized. No one has really noticed this or called it out because when internet misogyny happens, it's often assumed to be the men behind the issue. I kind of grew up thinking that millennials and Gen Z were better than the generations before when it came to misogyny, but the ways in which the internet in general gets so excited over another controversial woman is just kind of weird. Again, there are legitimate reasons to criticize, and also there are fair and ethical ways to criticize people. For example, I'm working on a video on Becca Bloom that I hope is fair, valid, and neutral, instead of just going in on Becca in a misogynistic way. Women are often covering topics that have to do with women online because women often tend to have a women-based audience. So I also think it's invalid to just baselessly claim that any woman who makes videos about women is misogynistic. But when does it cross the line into rumination and a cycle where the same talking points are being repeated over and over into oblivion, and it's not being constructive but completely destructive? Essentially, does the punishment fit the crime? Again, personally speaking here, though I often don't like diving into personal anecdotes in my videos too much, one of the things I've noticed most within the criticism I've received of my own content or just existing online is people criticizing me for the way that I speak. Either I'm not speaking fast enough for them, or I mispronounced a word. If it's an important cultural word or a name, I understand that completely, but making an occasional mistake on a mispronunciation and using that as a way to not take me seriously or call me stupid feels like a derailment and a major logical fallacy. Or if I'm participating in a live stream, which I'm new to doing and wanting to do more of because it's certainly a weak point for me online, it's my frequent use of filler filler words, which I'm sure could be obnoxious to listen to, but instead of judging what I'm saying based on its merit, everything becomes about tone policing, the way in which I'm saying it. Tone policing is something women and those in marginalized communities have dealt with for a long time. For example, the use of AAVE by Black individuals was tone policed as a form of discrimination and a means to criticize and dismiss Black people, rather than listening to the merits of their words. The use of like is seen as evidence that a woman is vapid, stupid, not to be taken seriously. Women are conditioned to use filler words more frequently in conversation because they're more likely to be interrupted, point derailed, not listened to. And yet filler words were also deemed something to be seen as stupid, as a reason to not take them seriously. As this study notes, another strong aspect of internalized misogyny is the internalization of the feeling to never be good enough. Lack of self-confidence stems from this socialization, and they quickly develop a vocabulary around claims of ignorance. It's a way to share an opinion or a fact without seeming arrogant, too assertive, or argumentative. It's a type of faked politeness that serves as erasure. These claims of ignorance often take the form of the general statement, "I don't know," used as a gap filler or an introduction. You know? That one hit home. It was really tempting to bring up specific examples of content creators in this video who dogpile on women, who use logical fallacies and misogynistic talking points to participate in takedowns as opposed to engaging critically and logically with the online rhetoric. But if I were to do so, I'm afraid this video would easily turn negative. The content I could essentially call out could become endless. Escaping internalized misogyny is, well, virtually impossible in a patriarchal world. Naturally, it seems much of the online world is simply drawn to content that contains more misogyny as opposed to content that actively works against it. And it seems like ultimately that's something that you have to actively work against within yourself, no matter your gender. That doesn't mean dialogue, criticism, or callouts are inherently misogynistic. I myself will likely make many deep dives on women who are famous or influencers, speaking on their stories, influence, and criticizing them where I deem it's valid. But I think there should be more responsibility placed in the way we go in on, well, people in general. There's a growing trend of dehumanization online, calling out people simply for acting cringe or doing something embarrassing, using gotchas as a way to slam dunk on someone or nitpick. What road are we traveling down, and what is the end destination here? Social media already exposes people to some of the darkest aspects of humanity. Do we really need to punch down whenever possible? And if we are doing so, maybe it's time to look inward at what that really says about us. That maybe it's a coping mechanism some people are doing to soothe themselves because their lives are spinning out of control. The world is falling apart. Every day they're becoming more and more oppressed, but they can leave a hate comment under a video, debase someone, and that makes them feel a little bit more in control. See you next time.